चलो आज हम लोग हमारा सेल साइकिल का जो प्लेलिस्ट है उसको थोड़ा सा और एक्सटेंड करते हैं बाय स्टार्टिंग अबाउट डीएनए डैमेज रेस्पॉन्स और डीडीआर pathways. So, before going to talk about DNA damage response, it is necessary to understand what are the cause of DNA damage. So, if we going to talk about the cause of the DNA damage, we can divide cause of the DNA damage into two things. One is exogenous causes, another one is endogenous causes. Exogenous cause मतलब जो चीज़ बाहर के कारण हो रहा है, मतलब बाहर की कुछ चीज़ के कारण डीएनए पे डैमेज आ रहा है, राइट. That means that it's not due to situations inside the cell, but it is due to some other reasons. For example, ionizing radiation, chemical mutagens. And there are second cause which are endogenous causes. Endogenous causes such as metabolic byproduct and stalled replication fork can also cause DNA damage. So DNA damage दो तरह से हो सकता है. For example, exogenous causes, ionizing radiation, chemical mutagen, and endogenous causes. For example, metabolic byproduct and stalled replication fork. So whenever DNA damage occurs, cell creates a elaborate cellular network. Those are known as DDR or DNA damage response. That cellular network ultimately leads to DNA repair, cell cycle arrest, and cell death, which is known as apoptosis. So we can classify DDR or DNA damage response into two classes. One is ATM pathway, another one is ATR pathway. Remember, DNA damage pathway involves two type of kinase. One is ATM kinase, another one is ATR kinase. When ATM kinase is activated, we call it ATM pathway. When ATR kinase is activated, we call it ATR pathway. And this ATM pathway and ATR pathway responsible for the repairing of different type of DNA damage, obviously. Okay. So पहले देख लेते हैं कि ATM and ATR चीज़ क्या है. So ATM, the full form of ATM is ataxia telangiectasia mutated, and ATR ataxia telangiectasia and RAT3 related. So this ATM and ATR are nothing but serine threonine kinase. Okay, मतलब इसका पावर है serine and threonine residue of any kind of protein को phosphorylate करना, and they are phosphatidyl inositol 3' kinase like kinase family members. Okay, मतलब they are members of phosphatidyl inositol 3' kinase like kinase family. So now if we going to generally classify DDR pathways, और अगर हम लोग DDR pathway को एक जनरली अंडरस्टैंड करना चाहे तो DDR pathway का टोटल 3 कंपोनेंट होता है. वन इज DNA डैमेज सेंसर्स, मतलब DDR पाथवे बोथ ATM एंड ATR में कुछ सेंसर्स रहेगा जो DNA डैमेज को सेंस करेगा, मतलब एक किस तरह का DNA डैमेज है. उसके बाद सिग्नल ट्रांसड्यूसर्स, कुछ प्रोटीन्स रहेगा जो दैट पर्टिकुलर टाइप ऑफ सिग्नल को ट्रांसड्यूस करेगा. ओके, मतलब वो पर्टिकुलर सेंसर डैमेज को सेंस करने के बाद एक पर्टिकुलर टाइप ऑफ प्रोटीन को एक्टिवेट करेगा. ए प्रोटीन जाके कोई और एक प्रोटीन को एक्टिवेट करेगा, ए प्रोटीन जाके कोई और एक प्रोटीन को एक्टिवेट करेगा, एंड अल्टीमेटली सेलुलर रेस्पॉन्स क्रिएट होगा. ओके, नाउ एंड द लास्ट पार्ट इज इफेक्टर्स. ओके, so let's see how it is going on. So first we will going to talk about ATM pathway. So remember, ATM pathway responsible for repairing double stranded breaks in DNA. For example, this one, double stranded breaks. This type of problems are repaired by ATM pathway. So first मैंने क्या बोला था कि हर एक टाइप ऑफ DDR पाथवे में 3 चीज़ रहता है: DNA डैमेज सेंसर, सिग्नल ट्रांसड्यूसर्स एंड इफेक्टर्स. सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल कोई सेंसर रहेगा जो इस DNA डैमेज को सेंस करेगा. सो यहाँ पर सेंसर है mRNA प्रोटीन. ओके, विच इज़ ए कॉम्प्लेक्स कंसिस्ट ऑफ 3 डिफरेंट प्रोटीन. उस प्रोटीन का नाम जानना उतना भी इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं है फिलहाल के लिए. नाउ जब एमआरएन इस प्रॉब्लम को सेंस कर लेगा वो एटीएम को रिक्रूट करेगा. ओके, विच इज द काइनेस एंड दैट इज व्हाई it is known as ATM pathway. Now once ATM is recruited, it starts interacting with mRNA. Okay, and as a result ATM become activated. Okay, and जब ATM activate हो जाएगा it will activate another downstream kinase known as CHK2. Okay, and this downstream kinase will going to transfer the signal to P53. This is the effector molecule for ATM pathway. So remember two things. In ATM pathway, the sensor is mRNA protein, right? And the effector is P53. And ATM and CHK2 play the role of signal transducers. Okay. And now P53 will facilitate the outcome that are checkpoint arrest, that may be DNA repairs, and that may be cell cycle, cell apoptosis also. Okay, so that is the ATM pathway that activates when mRNA, the sensor, sense double-stranded break type DNA damage. Okay, when mRNA sense it, it recruits ATM, and when mRNA interacts with ATM, ATM becomes activated, and it in turn activates CHK2, which is a downstream kinase. And now this CHK2 will going to activate another effector which is P53, and this P53 will create outcomes that will going to arrest the checkpoint and resolve the DNA damage, and it may also cause the apoptosis of the cell. Okay, so that is the ATM pathway. Now we will going to talk about ATR pathway. Remember, ATR pathway responsible for repairing a wide range of DNA lesions, especially those involved in replication. So in case of ATR pathway, the sensor is replication protein A. Okay, it will sense single stranded DNA damage and bind with the single stranded DNA created due to the stalled replication fork. Okay, so now once replication protein A bind with the single stranded DNA, it will also recruit ATR IP. This ATR IP is nothing but ATR interacting protein. Okay, and this ATR IP will facilitate the binding of ATR. Okay, and once ATR binds to ATR IP, it will activate the downstream kinase, which is in case of this ATR pathway CHK1. Okay, and this CHK1 in turn transfer the signal to CDC25. Okay, which is here the effector. Okay, and this effector will create cellular outcome that will going to resolve the problem. Okay, it may arrest the cell cycle and resolve the problem, it may repair the DNA, or it may causes apoptosis. Okay, so that's the idea. So एक चीज़ याद रखना कि ATM पाथवे में हमारा जो सेंसर था वो था mRNA protein, and in case of ATM pathway the effector was P53, and in case of ATR हमारा जो सेंसर था वो था रेप्लिकेशन प्रोटीन है, एंड यहाँ पर जो इफेक्टर था वो था CDC25. ओके, एंड अनदर इम्पॉर्टेंट थिंग, इन केस ऑफ ATM we are repairing double stranded break like DNA problem, and in ATR we are more interested to repair DNA lesions which is especially associated with the replication. Okay, so that's the concept of our DDR pathways. Okay, so यहाँ पर हमने ATM pathway and ATR pathway के बारे में बात किया. Along with that there are other type of DDR pathways that involve small RNAs known as ddRNAs. Okay, so that kind of pathways are also nowadays reported. Okay, so this is the DNA damage response pathway. So I hope this video will be helpful for you. Thank you.